stuff correct. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the working session for Tuesday, May 26th. Just as a reminder, the meetings of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Board of Directors are being recorded and live streamed for the purpose of transparency and increased public access. The live stream, along with the recordings from previously held meetings, can be found on the school board's YouTube channel. To get things started, we will start with student and staff recognition. Dr. Bitts, All-State Music Ensembles.
Yeah, we're excited to keep the celebrations going. So Mr. Kozlowski is here to be able to share with us a number of students from different ensembles here in the district who were able to achieve all-state status. So I will let him take it from here. Across this spine.
The best spot here. We want to make sure you can see these folks. Come. Lovely. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the chance to recognize these folks here. I'm going to have you introduce yourselves in a moment here. But just a little bit about this crew, and if you don't know what it means, they have to go through a very competitive and rigorous system to be eligible for these all-state ensembles. They prepare back in, choir starts in October with their first audition, and band and orchestra are in December. And they go to the district festival, which is about 7 surrounding counties, high schools from around the area, from the surrounding counties. And if they place high enough, they get to go to the district festival, usually in January. And their prize is they get to prepare more music and go through another audition and participate in a festival performance, usually with a college professor coming in as the guest conductor. And if they place high enough in that audition, they get to go to the region festival, where their prize is they get to prepare more music and go before another panel of judges. And if they score high enough there, then they get to move on and represent us at All-State. And these folks put in countless hours really on their own. It's very much, we as their teachers support them and cheer for them, but you don't get to this level without putting in much time on your own to make this happen, from just the sheer amount of repertoire that they need to learn and at the level that they all have achieved it. So, what they're going to do, they're going to tell you their name, first and last, what they play, and the ensemble that you placed in. Ready? Yes. All right. Oh, and tell them your year in school as well.
My name is Ian Brookmeyer. I am a senior. I play the alto saxophone, and I was in state concert band.
My name is Jonas Savant. I play the trombone. I'm a senior as well, and I was also in the concert band.
My name is Maribeth Dugan. I play the flute, and I was in all-state concert band, and I'm a senior.
My name's Emily Miller. I sing soprano, and I made all-state choir, and I'm a sophomore.
I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank everybody in this body for all of the support that makes a lot of wonderful things happen around the district, and especially for these kids involved in music here. We thank you for that. And we're very grateful for the chance to recognize this hardworking crew. Thank you.
So for the three of you graduating, are you planning to continue with this after?
I'm going to Westchester University for music education.
Very good.
I'm going to Iowa State for architecture, but I will probably minor in music.
Iowa State. That's a little ways away.
I'm going to Penn State, Maine, and I'm not majoring in music, I'm majoring in audiology and then minoring in both flute and voice, so I'm just wondering.
And I heard your dad with you breaking the tradition of not going where the others have gone, so
Yeah.
it wasn't.
Well, and he's a Notre Dame fan too.
Oh, wonderful, even better.
Oh, interesting.
Very good. as the traditional band representative.
I think it's amazing, and I can't imagine what you're gonna do for, 2 more years yet. So you're already at the top, but my kids were in band, and I just think that, I know you guys work harder than, say, a football team that's out there practicing less hours than you are. So, I appreciate all your hard work and representing us so well. Very well done.
Anyone else? Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for representing Mechanicsburg, but more importantly, thank you for taking the time to just learn and improve and enrich yourself and just have that dedication. And we look forward to seeing you for the next 2 years coming up as you continue. Great job, and thank you, Mr. K, for bringing it forward and sharing it with us. We appreciate it.
Swag for you here.
Thanks, Steve.
Background, so you gotta use it.
On 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Moving on to item 4, Budget and Finance, 401, Borough School Crossing Guards, Contracted Service.
This will not be as celebratory, but it's a good topic for us to have anyway. We're talking about a crossing guard contract that we have with the borough and some requested modifications that they're working towards with that. And Mr. Longwell will take us through a short presentation for that.
Thank you, Dr. Betts. As you mentioned, I find myself often following the student presentations, and so that always makes it a little bit tougher of a hill to climb. But an important topic nonetheless, and so one thing we wanted to look at here with the borough this year was what does our partnership for school crossing guards look like? So as part of that conversation, the borough has looked at maintaining it as an in-house option, but also exploring is it something they should contract out, knowing that there are some other schools in the region that have done that and have found pretty good success with it. We certainly have a neighbor just north of us, headed toward Harrisburg, that has done it, and we've gotten good references and good feedback from them. In the end, I would say probably the driving force behind that conversation was around staff shortages. And I think the contracted vendor, we can look at as part of the contract, one, increasing wages, but they have other supports they can wrap around in terms of supervision of the crossing guards and recruiting of the crossing guards. It also helps the borough in terms of them having to cover the crossings themselves with their own police, which then takes away from what are their patrol abilities. And so all around, I think it is a positive proposal. It's something we support administratively. And as we've talked with the borough about what that might look like in terms of cost, you can see the attachment there. There would be an increase in the contracted cost, but with our discussions with the borough, we talked about just splitting that increase evenly, which would be added on to the cost we already pay the borough to help provide crossing guards at those different crossings. So that would be our recommendation, to partner with the borough, continue to partner with the borough, but they'd be engaging a consultant or a contracted vendor to provide those different crossing guards.
How many crossing guards do we have?
So that's a good question. So we have 5 that are really through the borough and that we would be looking to contract. The reason I hesitated there was around our buildings, we do have some staff who push out around the building's perimeter. I know Mr. Bradley, you're aware of at least one of those in the prior years. And so like at Shepherdstown and Elmwood, even over at the high school, some of our buildings that are in the borough or even in the township, there are staff pushing out, but the borough does contract 5 at the very busy intersections. So down there on Walnut by Joseph James Jewelers, on Broad Street. You can see one heading up York. Those are some of the 5.
So there are none in Sharmanstown or Upper Allen?
So Sharmanstown, from our perspective, with that being a River Rock building, I think probably all of those students are transported via, I shouldn't say all absolutely, but I think the majority or all of those students are transported by River Rock and the sending school districts, because we would be transporting students from Sharmanstown into North Side.
Via bus.
Via bus.
Via bus, same thing with Upper Allen.
Yeah.
And there is one up at the top of Meadowview.
That's one of our employees.
That's one of our employees? Okay.
Okay, yes. This contract is for all crossing guards annually?
So this would cover the crossing guards that the borough manages, the ones that we manage, and that's why I maybe made that distinction, and maybe could have made it a little more succinctly. The school crossing guards, the push out around our buildings will continue to be our employees. We're really looking at the 5 that the borough is responsible for staffing those crossings, and their recommendation and our support of their recommendation is to contract it.
What are the other logistical efficiencies that would be coming with the contract? Because I'm looking at this, we're more than doubling the cost, and I don't really understand that.
So I would say a fair amount of the cost increase, and we had that conversation, so it's a good question. A fair amount of the cost increase is also right-sizing their salaries, so in terms of what they pay hourly, it's probably about $15 an hour right now those crossing guards are getting, but the crossing guard company is saying, for us to be successful, here's what we've seen regionally, and here's where we see the pay going. And so I don't know that we've settled on a number just yet, but I would certainly see it probably going up by, $18, $20 an hour, increasing. So there's a couple elements of it. One, increasing the salaries to help with recruiting and retention of those individuals, but then also the other logistical efficiencies of who's overseeing it, how are they managing vacancies, who's substituting. That's a little bit back to right now, when there's vacancies, the police are often having to backfill those crossings because we don't want a crossing to go unfilled by any stretch. And so that's some of the additional efficiencies that we talked about there. So.
Could you highlight for the board, Mr. Longwell, what this, I don't believe it's actually in school code, I think it's in a different part of PA code, but what PA code says about crossing guards and the boroughs?
Yeah, so to Dr. Bitz's point, there is language from a legislative perspective, and it might be more related, as he mentioned, to the municipal code. I do believe that that's where it's located. That in the event of having crossing guards, there is a split between the municipality and the school district, and there's language about it can either be agreed upon, whatever the split is, or it could be 50-50. For a very long time, you can see our split was not 50-50, but I think in the spirit of continuing our partnership and looking at what is the additional cost, we kind of arrived at a compromise of 50-50 for whatever the increased cost is, versus splitting it in the proportion where the district would pay more, but maybe they would pay less for the increased cost. Vice versa, I think it would be harder for us to say, hey, with the new contract, would they pay more? So the 50-50 split seemed the most fair, and I think the most palatable for both of our perspectives. So.
How long is the proposed? I'm sorry. How long is the proposed contract?
It is, I believe it's approved annually, but I can double check that. Yeah, I can double check. So it could go up.
So Mike?
Yeah. It could go up. I mean, I think with most of our contracted vendor relationships, we would be having conversations with them about what do the increases look like and is it fair. We have a variety of contracted vendors that supplement different things we do as a school district, or just provide services outright. And we're just having that conversation at the time to say what's the increase and what's a fair increase. So.
Will these crossing guards have any other duties other than attending to our kids?
So they would be compensated to, just like they are now, there'd be a window of time at each of the crossings in the morning and the evening, and then that would be their responsibilities, and then we would pay by the hour based on their cost.
I just wanted to make sure they didn't have any other duties that we were paying for too.
Sure. Not for the contracted crossing guards. The staff are obviously a little different situation.
And the costumes that go with it.
Costumes go with it.
Anyone?
I'll just mention one of the other things. So these, obviously, the borough has long managed these, will continue to manage the contract, and approached us about wanting to make this change. One of the main differences between these crossing guards that the borough has always brought out and the ones that are our employees is control of traffic. These crossing guards, for example, at the Four Corners at Broad Street, they actually go into the street, they're stopping traffic, they're controlling traffic. Our staff members are controlling students. So they're gonna be, at the corner, they're gonna be telling kids, wait, or go, or that sort of thing. They're not controlling the traffic in the same way that these are.
That's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Any other questions or comments? And if there are no objections, we'll move this forward to the June board meeting for vote. Okay, thank you. We will move on to 4.02, which is the fund balance commitments in the general fund. I'm assuming Mr. Longwell?
Yeah, thank you. I know Dr. Bitts would be aptly able to speak to it as well, but it is a finance one, so I'll happy to get this, take the bar up there. As the board probably recalls, this is a two-part process that we worked through as far as our fund balance is concerned. And so right now, as we sit here in May, we're not prepared yet to set aside the specific dollar allocations for each of those fund balance categories because we haven't ended our year. And so really, this is just saying, here's the categories, step one, here's the categories we would like to identify for fund balance set-asides. And then once we finalize our audit, so that would be into August, September, October, we'll be coming back to the board for that second part to say, here's how we ended the year, June 30, in this case, 2026. Here's what our total fund balance is, and here's all the separate set-asides that categorically we had approved here. And so that's step one, would be our recommendations to identify these categories, which are consistent, frankly, with prior years and our typical approach to how we divide up our fund balance. So.
Any questions? Okay, if not, then we'll continue the process of moving that forward. Thank you. We'll move on to item 5, curriculum early literacy update. Dr. Bitt.
We're excited to be able to bring a group of folks back to be able to share with you an update on our early literacy program for this year. Coming into this year, it was a 2-year journey to get to the point where we were ready to implement CKLA, and we have done that for this school year. So we're able to come back and celebrate, reflect, and share lots of feedback from the year. So I'll turn things over to Mrs. Bachman, and she has a group of folks that will be sharing with her.
I will say, usually they tell us it's intimidating to be standing in front of the board when all of us, when you come up, it's like, okay, this is serious stuff.
Got MVPs at this stage.
All color coordinated. Unplanned.
I thought they were the crossing guards.
Well, good evening. It's truly an honor to be here alongside our primary grade level coordinators and classroom teachers and one of our early literacy coaches to share highlights from our first year of implementation with CKLA, also known as Core Knowledge Language Arts. I could not be more personally proud of our phenomenal leaders and our primary teachers and specialists who have brought this program to life with remarkable commitment. Implementing a new program at this level is no small task, and yet they have approached it with energy, professionalism, and a belief in what's possible for our students. In fact, our partners at Amplify, so the publishing company, have recognized Mechanicsburg as a model of excellence. Their words, if we could copy and paste from your early literacy committee to now, we would for all other districts. The work you'll hear tonight is representative of a collective effort. We are more than any one of us. And it's a true team effort. Alongside our teachers, we've had our instructional coaches, our literacy coaches, our building principals, and our district leadership team supporting implementation. Grounding our work, and it continues to remain, these are our North Stars, our mission and vision, our shared beliefs, and our K-12 ELA transfer goals. At its core, the work is about building a strong foundation for our youngest learners, ensuring that every K-3 student develops the ability to think critically, to read deeply, to communicate effectively, and to use literacy as a tool for learning within and beyond our system. Our intentionality and our focus are already evident in the impact we are seeing. While we're still gathering end-of-the-year data and analyzing that, we took a deep dive in middle-of-the-year data, and we avoided an implementation dip, which is often unheard of accompanying a new initiative. At the same time, our classrooms are alive with robust vocabulary, with sophisticated student conversations that you're going to hear about this evening, and we're seeing a renewed sense of energy and enthusiasm from our classroom teachers around literacy. These are all powerful early indicators that we're having the kind of foundation that our students need to succeed. We've taken intentional steps to help with prioritization. We'll hear more about that from Mrs. Pahanic this evening. Through ongoing collaboration, we are strengthening how each grade level builds from one to the next so that our students are interacting with a cohesive and intentional program. We are so incredibly proud of the work that has taken place this year. We are grateful for the support from the school board and from the collective efforts to help make this year, again, notable and noteworthy, as you're going to be hearing highlights shortly. And at this time, we're going to begin. You're going to have a chance to hear from our kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, hearing student experiences, some family experiences, and then from Mrs. Pahanic, our literacy coach, and hearing the insights and the impact this vital work is having on all of our students.
All right, well, thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Fissel. I am a kindergarten teacher and grade level coordinator downstairs. I was not one of the pilot teachers last year, so CKLA was brand new to me. It wasn't even quite sure what I was getting myself into when we got started. Many of you have heard that CKLA has two components to it, is skills and knowledge, and I'm going to begin with the skills component. As kindergarten teachers, we are setting the foundation for all of the mechanics for reading and writing, and that's what skills really encompasses. You can see over on the right-hand side that it is systematic, explicit instruction in progression of skills that we're teaching. The first couple of units, we're really starting with not even writing, but writing strokes. We're not even introducing letters or sounds yet. We introduce those precursor skills of writing strokes, concepts of print, where we're teaching the top, bottom, left to right, and building those fine motor skills. Then within the third unit, we start introducing sounds. We don't call them letters, we just call them sounds. And that was a big shift for all of our kindergarten teachers. Try teaching some words later on, just using the word sounds. And we introduce sounds. And after the first 8 sounds in our first vowel, we start putting those sounds together and building words, which is much earlier than we had in the past. When we're doing that, you can see in the center there we have our chaining boards up on the board where the teacher is the one who's manipulating the sounds, but the students are doing the reading. So as students are reading those words, they're making sense of it. We're talking about vocabulary. Sometimes we're using them in sentences. And then we progressively build where students start to manipulate one sound at a time with those sound paddles until the students then get their own chaining board and they're manipulating sounds. Not the entire alphabet, just a small portion of those sounds so they can really limit the cognitive load that they're experiencing. As we introduce the sounds, we're also incorporating writing into that, giving lots of explicit instruction, allowing a lot of feedback as well. At the beginning of the year, our reading specialists push in and our instructional aides are in there. So working with all of those students, there's lots of opportunity for feedback to the students. And it's always done in tandem. If you look at the bottom left-hand side here, once we start putting CVC words together, the students are reading words, and they're making meaning of those words. They're circling the pictures that make sense, and then they're writing those words. Continually working on correct letter formation, building that muscle memory for them. About halfway through the year, we start introducing books, our readers, and tricky words. And the tricky words are words that have letters that don't play by the rules. And we provide a lot of support with that, where those words up there, you can see 1, 2, and 3 are underlined for the parts that don't play by the rules. So there's a lot of scaffolding there within CKLA, within that progression. We then move into reading phrases and making sense of those small phrases. The students are reading them in readers, they're then reading them, they're writing them, and then they're making sense of it independently as they draw the pictures that go along with it. So that meaning making is always there for those two reciprocal processes. It then progresses into reading sentences, and then you can see on the bottom right-hand side, the students are reading connected text now at this point in the year. We're reading stories with beginning, middle, end, problems, solutions, characters, and we've been working on comprehension all the while. Students have opportunities to read often in partners, and that allows us to work with students that might be experiencing difficulties, while those that are able to do it can read in partners. So they have lots of repeated practice with that. And you can see now at this point of the year, now they're reading questions, answering questions independently, and writing a sentence at the end of the year based on what they have read. And that didn't happen before in years past. So that's an exciting change this year. The second half of our strand is knowledge, and I've been really struggling trying to put into words what knowledge is. And as I reflected on it this afternoon, really it's the thinking part. The students are doing so much thinking in a broad range of areas, as you can see on the right-hand side. They are working on speaking and listening skills. Again, at the beginning, we start very simple with the speaking and listening, really teaching them what we want. As speakers and listeners working with partners, we teach them how to speak in a sentence, the who and the what is happening. So we're integrating grammar at a kindergarten-friendly level with nouns and verbs. They just don't call them at the beginning of the year. But we're still sequencing stories, talking about characters, events, putting them in order, and then we eventually let the students start to do that, and then they speak in sentences with a partner telling the events that are happening. But you can see when we get to some of those broad topics, there's scientific pictures up there where they're using high-level vocabulary that they actually bring back often throughout the year. We're using graphic organizers. We're explaining why we're using graphic organizers, but they're the ones doing the speaking, we're the ones doing the writing. To the end of the year, where students wrote a narrative piece with the beginning, middle, and end about a new president. And each teacher did their own way of bringing CKLA alive, from readers' theater to hands-on topics with plants. My class, we made soup after we learned about plants. Or even bringing art projects in where you can see the young lady holding her own artwork for Mount Rushmore, where they got to create their own presidents in their own Mount Rushmore. So it's been fun to see what other teachers have done and that collaboration piece. At the beginning of every knowledge unit, we start with I know, I think, I wonder. And I wondered at the beginning of the year, how is this going to translate beyond the classroom? And I have two quick stories to share with you. One on our second environmental center trip, which is typically a science field trip, which we were bringing back a lot of the plants that we learned earlier in the year. And we were talking about the age of trees and trying to count the rings in the trees. And we wondered at that moment, is there a tree that is as old as our country? Because at that moment we were learning about presidents and our country and the beginning of our country. And by the end of the trip, we had found this tree that had just fallen, but was from 1740. And we were like, whoa, this is older than our country. So I was really pleased with that connection from two different curricular areas on a science field trip, bringing back some of the CKLA knowledge at the time. And the second story is from the right. One of the teachers came to me and said that a parent had reached out to her saying, my son is loving everything that you're doing about presidents, so much so that he is making us sit and watch the 6-part series on presidents on Netflix. So I no longer wonder, I know that CKLA is sparking curiosity within our classrooms, but also at home. So which is very exciting for me.
Oops, sorry. So I'm Erin Witters. I'm a first grade teacher at Upper Allen and also the grade level coordinator as well. I did have the pleasure of piloting last year, and I think the piece to say is everything we spoke about last year continues to stand true of the amazing things we're saying. But when I look through it through a first grade lens, I think I would share that it's been a very positive, exciting journey for us. And when I was asked to bring together some highlights of the year, I kept coming back to 4 main words. This idea that CKLA provides us with rigor, collaboration, creativity, and I just lost the last one. I knew that was going to do that. I'll come back to it. Those type of things. But as we go through, I promise I'll get to that last one. When we look at skills, ours is set up very similar to kindergarten. We have our skills section and our knowledge section. You can see the different components that come with it. And when I think of our skills, this is where that word rigor comes through. And when I say rigor, I don't mean, hey, we made it harder for kids. We gave them more explicit instruction for our kiddos to access these complex vowel patterns and spelling patterns. So now they're able to access books from the library. They're able to read things that go beyond just a reader that comes with the program, and they're excited to do so. A great example of that, you can see that text on the top that says, I have a lot of snapshots. And so that's where we started as a first grade. That was our first reader, and that's what the text looks like. By the time you got to the Big Dig, that was the last reader that we had gotten to this year. So you can see the demanding growth, the rigor of tricky words to 2-syllable words to the structure of the text. And the most amazing thing, though, is our kids hung with us, that they rose to the challenge. Not only could they read it and build their fluency, but they had the comprehension to go with it and the connections. They started connecting to other areas. The other area that skills brings to us is connected writing, and it brings back the consistency of the writing genres, but it's all connected to what they're reading. And so you can see up on the screen, I did a retelling of The Two Dogs, which was a book report / retelling, and it was done in November. So you can see the scaffolding that was provided. You can see they were starting to get it and use the resources. And then towards the end of our year, we were using another reader. So all of this information comes from the actual readers students are using to research in animals. So this particular student chose puffins. And you can just see the growth in their writing. You can tell that there's less scaffolding. They're putting closing. So it's not so much the quantity of the writing, but the quality, and they're engaged in doing so. The other piece of skills that was exciting to watch is the collaboration. That might have been one of the C's I missed. I promise I'll get back to it. Was it that one? So it's the collaboration. Skills has provided us the opportunity to provide our students opportunities to collaborate with each other, whether that be reading and answering these corresponding questions to demonstrate their comprehension, or reading these words. You see 2 examples of a spelling tree to help students start to distinguish which pattern is more popular, which one is used but not as frequent. And our students aren't just getting the information, though, they're using it, they're owning it, they're speaking it, they're listening to it, they're giving each other feedback. And so it's exciting to watch our students to the point that this collaboration isn't a crutch, where, they have to help each other to get through it, but they're truly having discussions, like Mrs. Fissel said, about speaking and listening their complete sentences and what they think they should be, or that's a great answer, but maybe you could adjust it a little bit. And they're taking it on, the independence on their own, and they're owning it. That collaboration, we would be remiss not to say that it's carried over to the teachers as well. Because we're carrying a common program, we're able to share strategies more often and share a language and find ways that we can bring more commonalities to all of our first grade classrooms, especially since we're spread out in 4 different buildings. The other piece we have is knowledge, just like Mrs. Fissel had said, the kindergarten curriculum does. And you can see a list of, these are all the various topics. We range from science to social studies to literacy. And again, this one comes to the connections. This was my big one from the pilot. I walked away saying, wow, these kids are making connections, and they are much stronger than I could have ever imagined our students were making. With knowledge, our students are growing their listening comprehensions through teacher read-alouds and then applying their knowledge in writing. They're applying this content to their writing, and whether they're sharing about space or you see examples of American independence or geography, they're excited to do so. And this carryover of this rich vocabulary is quite amazing. You can see in the Ben Franklin, they were asked to make a caption. And the key word was Ben Franklin. And they are pulling words like rocking chair. He invented the rocking chair and the lightning rod. And that last word is Poor Richard's Almanac. And they're talking about Thomas Jefferson. And I think an amazing connection. So yes, we're doing it, and our students are using the vocabulary, such as I allowed my students to explore with quills. Because they didn't write with a pen and a pencil, so and their parameter was explore with it. And I expected first grade pictures. And they started writing the Declaration of Independence, or they started turning it into correspondence, like Dear Mom, or I love you, Mom. Like they took it to heart. As we were reflecting this afternoon, I had that aha moment of that vertical articulation of we have a moment during the year where kindergarten comes to visit first grade. It is not CKLA related whatsoever. It's just to build our kindergartners for the transition. And one activity we do in the classroom is we compare how our two grades are similar and they're different. And the teacher I was with said, hey, we do CKLA, and the kindergarten kid said, so do we. And so that would be enough, right? In past, we'd be like, that's amazing. I'm glad you carried it over. And the question came up, well, what are you learning about? And the kindergartner said, we're learning about presidents. And you would have thought that they were talking about common themes like Pokemon or Neatos, right? And the first graders were like, no way. We learned about George Washington. And the kindergartners were like, yes, so did we. Did you know And to see these content-rich, vertical conversations were something that I just stood back and said, well, this is quite incredible. They're excited about it, they're curious about it. And the last piece from first grade is we cannot walk away without celebrating the creativity that it's brought into the buildings, into our classrooms. Through that collaboration, our team has come together to create very meaningful activities and experiences for our students to celebrate at the end of these domains, each of these domains, whether it be we dressed up as doctors and we reviewed all of the various body parts and things we had learned during that unit, or we dressed up as, during the 1700s, Ben Franklin there, and wrote with those quills to give them experiences. The other piece is it brought creativity back into the classroom for our students. They were starting to apply their knowledge, whether it be making planets and writing about them, or pictures about deciduous forests versus the rainforest, or habitats, or retelling stories. It truly lets students enjoy it and celebrate it. So through the first grade lens, it has been an extremely positive and exciting journey for us.
I am Caitlin Doyle. I teach at Broad Street. I teach second grade. I also did not have the opportunity to pilot, so looking at this program, I'm like, whew, okay, we're gonna do it. But it has been a year to remember. To quote one of my colleagues, she created this beautiful mural in our open classroom at Broad Street, and it has been so fun to see the kids go and point out, oh, I remember that from this reader and that from that read aloud, and sharing stuff they remembered at the beginning of the year and things like that. Just the connections within our grade level, but also the connections within our building. I frequently take my kids down to first grade and they look at the American Revolution, and we're learning about the War of 1812. So they think it's so cool, oh, there's the 13 colonies. And up in the picture, we learned about cycles in nature. That was one of our knowledge units. So you see us candling an egg, an unfertilized egg. But then we also got down to third grade to see the chicks when they hatched. And during that time, we saw the Roman paragraphs that they wrote about. And they were like, wait, that sounds like the Greek people that I learned about. And I'm like, well, next year you'll go and you'll have all this information. So just building that excitement again. This is also pictures of pancakes. We had a Tall Tales unit and we did a pancake breakfast, piggybacking off of what we hear. But the kids still talk about it and they remember it. So we have knowledge as well. These are examples of our units. They were some pretty heavy topics when I was looking at them. I'm like ancient Greece, okay, the Civil War, something I never taught in second grade before, but those students, they rose to the challenge and they were very excited. We had some tears when we left Greece to go to a different unit. We had 2 units of Greece and they did not want to go. But in those times we talked about retelling and we focused on myths. We talked about why geography helped the culture and the economy and things like that. And then we really focused on that informative writing. The kids wrote opinion writing. They call it their Oreo writing. And they read things and they're like, hey, I know that's an opinion writing, because they can point out the certain aspects of the writing that they're so used to writing now. They also learned research skills, primary and secondary resources. We just left aviation land, where we got to read all different types of stories and also read works articles, so mixing up that text, and they learned about all these new aviators. We also have some poetry up there. We learned poetry. I remember going to Jennifer and I was like, what is this? Because in second grade, that's their first exposure to poetry. But I'm like, well, Jennifer, next year you'll have all these kids that are ready for you. Because I'm like, oh, okay, well, but they did great with it. They definitely rose. That rigor was there, but they definitely met the challenge. And it was really cool to see even some of my kids that came in not having a lot of confidence with this curriculum. They have just grown and blossomed, and they go home and they're having these conversations at the dinner table, and it's amazing to hear. We also have skills. The spelling trees come back in second grade. We have a lot of spelling trees. There's only 4 there. We end the year with about 15 spelling trees. It was very fun. In my classroom, there were leaves and trees everywhere, but the kids were excited to learn about it. We focus on grammar, which was something that came back that I was not used to teaching. We talk about verb conjugation, parts of speech, taking that who and what that they talk about in kindergarten and in first grade and expanding your sentence into a more robust sentence, conjugations, things like that. We reiterate that opinion writing and the narrative writing in skills as well. In the 2 examples on the left, they got to plan a new story ending for their readers that they were reading, and they got to just take it and run with it. They brainstorm and go through the whole writing process. Right now in the War of 1812, they are practicing note-taking, which I know in 3rd grade they do note-taking, but right now it's teachers doing it, and they're helping me decide from reading informational text what's important to remember and capturing it in note-taking. And the spelling has just continued to impress me with, we're doubling consonants and adding a suffix, and we're doing irregular. I brought back the song that I learned in 2nd grade, the Y to an I and add ES, and they thought I was weird, but now I hear them singing it, so there we go. They also are learning to use text evidence and cite text evidence to answer questions. As you can see at that bottom right picture, they have to include the page number that they used, and they love it. They're sad to be moving on. I'm like, you're just learning all this new stuff, then you'll get to do it again next year, but it really has opened up that collaboration across grade levels. And I'm also seeing them take the skills from CKLA, and I see it in math when they have to explain their thinking. I used to say, I need a picture of your brain, and I don't have to say that anymore. Now I could use, they're giving me the whole movie. I don't need stuff, but it's really, I'm like, oh, we're gonna write today, and there's no like, oh, not again. They're excited to write. They're excited to share their ideas. They correct themselves in morning meeting when they're sharing. They're like, oh, wait, that wasn't a complete sentence. Let me try that again. So it's really, and they're giving each other feedback. It's just been such a success, and it was scary. I will be completely honest. It was scary at first, but it's definitely worth it, and I'm super proud of them.
And I am Jennifer Rogoski. I teach 3rd grade, and as you can imagine, I can't wait to get these students. There's probably not a single thing they have mentioned that I can't make a connection to in something we have taught, which is very exciting. Oh my goodness gracious. How do you work the thing? See, I'm so excited.
Small button.
On the side. Yeah, I got it. It's a different button. Okay, so where was I?
There's a class on that later, so.
I know, right? Okay, there's only so many days left. That might be the first thing I've lost. So one thing I want to tell you about that is different in third grade compared to what you have just heard is that third grade is considered to be integrated. So what that means is we don't have separate skills, we don't have a separate knowledge, it is all mixed together. For example, our Unit 4 was stories of ancient Rome. And within that knowledge topic, we taught all the skills. So we're taking notes about Rome. We wrote an opinion essay about which god should have a statue in modern day Rome. We did map skills, learning where all the battles occurred. Partner reading happens almost every day. We did the good old-fashioned Reader's Theater is still there, where we acted out, it was a legend that we had done. The debate is probably one of my highlights from this unit. We learned all about Julius Caesar, and we took notes about him. They had to come up with a position statement. Is he a traitor or is he a hero? And they had to back it up with reasons and evidence, and you can see them sitting there on both sides of the carpet. And what was very cool is before in third grade somebody would say something, okay, great, yeah. But they are listening to each other. The speaking and the listening has significantly changed in my classroom. They would listen to someone and they would have a counter argument right back to them. It reminded me a lot when I hear about high school and debate team. It looked like that, it sounded like that, so that was really exciting. So that's sort of how the integrated piece works. We have a 2-hour stretch where we are focused all in doing multiple things all under one topic. I went out and got some teacher celebrations just to find out. I was here last year and very excited about it. And as Caitlin said, I have said this from the start, it is hard, but it is worth it. The achievements students are making are amazing. So these were some of the things that teachers said that they appreciated the most. Books in hands. And I don't want you to think that we didn't have kids reading before, but the quantity, the quality, and the amount of reading that we are doing every day surpasses anything I've done in the past. You can see up there we have partner reading going on. Kids are taught, I think from kindergarten, to do partner reading. One is a coach, one is the reader. So they learn how to correct their partner, and they are matched purposefully, usually with a fluent and then a less fluent reader to increase that fluency. Vocabulary, I think I probably said this last year, vocabulary it knocked my socks off. I didn't believe it at first, so I went back and I did some stuff with them. Like they don't know these words, and they knew them all. They read them, they write them, they're speaking with them. They're speaking in the hallways, going to the bathroom to other kids who are learning about the same thing. And when you do it that much, it just is a new word, you know. The writing quality. We have always taught writing, but what I noticed this year, it's not quantity, it's the kinds of sentences that kids are writing. We are teaching conjunctions all year long and making these compound and complex sentences. I noticed the transfer. I was excited to see the transfer. So at the end of third grade, one of our final activities is to write thank you notes to somebody at Broad Street. And they always were nice. You know, I like you, thank you for helping me. This year's sentences were so deep and so meaningful, and that's all the transfer I needed. Speaking, we've talked a lot about speaking. It's not an easy thing to teach 8 and 9-year-olds how to talk to each other. That's one piece that I'm excited that they're already building that in the previous grades. And my last word up there is confidence. One teacher said to me, you know, we all have classrooms, and we all have students where learning is hard. And this program has given every kid a seat at the table. It builds background knowledge when we do our speaking and listening, and everybody can participate in the conversation. I have some lower students who totally have trouble writing, but they are right in there with speaking and listening and can spout off facts. And that has been really exciting to see. And if we're going to get teacher celebrations, we got to hear from students. So last week, we just did a brain dump. Everything that you have learned this year. Probably only a tip of the iceberg. And then I had them write down. I said, how has ELA helped you this year? You can see at the top, I learned a lot of new words. A lot of new words. From one of my L's. It helped me read and write words and make my English better. Just that speaking part. At the bottom, you can see the vast depth of what we've done. I did not, this was just a how has it helped you grow? It helped me grow by learning new words, meandering, astronomy, onomatopoeia. We learned about people, Julius Caesar, Cleopatra. Never thought I would teach about her. Jane Goodall. The stories we read classics like Mulan and Alice in Wonderland. And Wind in the Willows is a 100-year-old story that they could have cried when it was over. I would read the manual at night and think, oh, how am I going to sell this story? I didn't have to. They ate up every single word. Classifying planets. Now they're ready for 4th grade. And then I'm going to phrase the last slide that I have. In January, February, we did a vertical, which Kara's going to talk about. And so they asked us to gather and make some slides to share with, for me, K-2. So I asked one of my students, who was middle of the road, but you could read her work very easily, if I could borrow her work to copy. So I took some photographs, did all things, and I'm getting ready to put it back, and I see this. I love CKLA. Just saying, she might belong to somebody on the board. That's the impact. They love it.
And I'm Kara Panic, and I am the newest early literacy coach for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And in my position as part of the coaching team, I have the privilege of getting to see the behind the scenes work that goes into implementation here, as well as the on-stage work that these ladies and their colleagues all do every day in their classrooms. And so I'm going to start just by telling you a little bit about some of the behind the scenes stuff that happened this year. The first thing was that we had Amplify, the publishing company for CKLA, came out twice in November and then just most recently in May for some learning walks. Keenan, who is our Amplify rep, was so impressed when he came. He said the planning and preparation that the teachers are doing every day is evident. And he actually made the comment that Mechanicsburg in November was far ahead of what districts typically look like in year 1 of implementation. So when he came back, we felt like, okay, we really got to make sure we kept up with this. And he continued to be amazed. He said that teachers and students are comfortable with the content and the routines that had been set up throughout the year. And again, to quote what Linda said, is that we were a model of excellence there. Something else that happened was we did some vertical articulation. So you've heard about that a couple of times. In February, we had an opportunity on a staff day to have staff engage in vertical articulation. And so one way that implementation is going to be successful is not only if teachers understand their step, their grade level, but also what happens outside of their grade level. So these wonderful ladies did an expanded presentation, basically of what you just saw, that got a little bit more into the weeds about what they were learning and the activities that they were doing, and presented it to grade level teams. This gave the teachers an understanding of what happens before them and then where those students go after, which was incredibly beneficial. We plan to do a part 2 on the June 2nd staff-only day so that teachers can get that full year scope and sequence for all the grade levels around them. And the last behind the scenes was a lot of professional learning happened this year. We had lots of opportunities to provide and work alongside with staff in order to provide and support them in this first year of implementation. The first thing that we did was came up with a frequently asked questions document. Coaches and other teachers would sort of get in our ears about questions they had, concerns they had, and we would send out about once a month. In the beginning of the year was a little more frequently asked questions so that we could answer questions to everybody at the same time without having to sort of play the telephone game. Again, we had those staff only days. We had one in January where teachers went to they worked as a grade level, they went to different stations, and those stations were led by members of the learning support, ELD, gifted, reading specialist, and speech and language therapists, I believe. They each ran a station and they worked to annotate and make accommodations for students that would fit their populations and present those accommodations of an upcoming lesson to the classroom teachers to sort of help them understand, hey, here are some ways that you can accommodate or give everybody a seat at the table. And then finally, we did some very brief, about 20 to 30 minute professional development sessions virtually for our instructional assistants, because we know that this is also new for them and they were going in to support their vital support in the classroom, and so we provided them with some overview information about CKLA to help give them ideas of how to support when they're in the classroom. But by far, the best part of my job is getting to get into the classrooms. And I know you've heard a lot of the things that that they have told you, but just from my perspective, teachers and students are doing amazing things every day. We knew that the increase in rigor, you've heard this a couple of times, was going to present some challenges. And man, did these teachers and students rise to it every single day. Kids are reading more complex text and they're understanding it. They're writing at greater length and with greater accuracy at the same time. They are taking part in these culminating experiences that are really bringing to life the content that they're learning, while also providing them with opportunities to transfer that information to new situations. Again, the speaking and listening that they are doing is so valuable, especially in this technological age where kids are very virtual and on a screen a lot. The amount of time that they are just engaging in speaking and listening to one another has been hugely beneficial. Kids are excited about their learning and they're feeling more successful because they come with some background information in order to complete the tasks that are put ahead of them. I've been blessed to be able to see lessons from kindergarten through third grade, and when I tell you that these women are really underselling the amazing things that are happening every day, it knocks my socks off, to borrow Dr. Bitz's phrase, because they really are doing wonderful things.
So we're going to close with one final slide. So CKLA, right, amplifies this core knowledge, language arts. We say C, collective effort. When we took this journey and started last year, I remember saying, started with the Boys in the Boat Club. We're going to go on a journey and we're going to do it together. And this has really served as a testimony to that we are more than ourselves and the power of collaboration and working together. K, kids first. We know when our students do not have the foundational skills by grade 3, the trajectory is not a good one. We have prioritized our kids and have helped create a foundation to position them well as they move through our system. L, literacy alive. reading, writing, speaking, listening, intentional, and lively. And last but not least, advancing learning. It's what we're here for, to help our students. And again, as they feed in and they go to 4th grade and beyond, they are now ready to engage in deep learning across all curricular areas.
I just want to acknowledge how hard it must have been and all the time and effort that our faculty put in to implement this new program, because like as Bill was saying, what we're going to be learning about Greek mythology, like I don't know. And all the things that you have shared with us about how much the children have learned it, I think is a direct result of how much work and enthusiasm you have put in. And I know that it would not have been possible with all the time and effort that you invested. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, teacher commitment is key, and I can see that commitment is evident. Absolutely.
I don't know why you're surprised when somebody from the outside world says, oh my gosh, you guys are so much better than any other school district we compare this to. Because I was going to give you all the credit, Linda, but my God, it's all the teachers working so hard to do it right and for the kids. It's so evident. And I feel like for 25 years I've sat here on the board and I've listened to hundreds of presentations, but I've never seen teachers as excited with results as I have tonight and previous presentations you've given on this. It must be like life-changing for you. So I expect, Jen, you could teach another 30 years. I don't think that's gonna happen. It's amazing to hear you talk about it, and it's amazing to hear you say, I can see the difference from previous years, how much more the kids are getting out of it. So I can't thank you enough for preparing our kids so much better. And it's all due to you guys. You guys get all the credit for being above every other school district. So congratulations.
I'll say it from a parent perspective. I have a 2nd grader at Shepherdstown, and he was in a pilot classroom last year. He was in Schneider's class in 1st grade. And he was already pretty engaged with the previous curriculum, because his only ask from Santa last 2 Christmases ago was the magnetic boards from the curriculum website. And I found them cheaper on eBay, but Ms. Schneider ended up giving us her leftover. She's like, well, we're entering into a pilot classroom phase, so we don't need these anymore. And that's all he wanted for Christmas. But then we moved into CKLA, and just what he's coming home and talking about and modeling and reciprocate, it's just night and day. My son's autistic, and the way that he's engaging in these specific knowledge areas is speaking right to how his brain works, because it's going deep into this one knowledge area. And I have pictures on my phone. We have a whiteboard in our house. This is a whole chart of ancient Greece, and we have and I would come home and add to the chart, and it was I would have to show this to you, but it's insane what he did. And then and I'll get pictures from a Sunday school teacher where he 2 Sundays ago he wanted to teach a Sunday school class a human body lesson, and so he drew on the board the urinary system, and he had the kidneys, and he had the ureter, and he had the bladder. And if you were to Google the urinary system, that is exactly what he did. And people have lots of questions. But he just, the way that he's engaged and the way that it's feels inclusive for how his brain works, and how he just comes home and regurgitates everything and actually understands it. He creates flashcards and quizzes me. I have to learn what kidneys look
Smarter than a 2nd grader.
Yeah. And so, but it's just the engagement that he brings home and retains and then teaches everyone he talks to.
like you can tell, you know, it's very impactful, and I've been really impressed as a parent with this curriculum because I get excited. Like when I tell people about how my son's doing in school, like what essentially I'm telling them is what CKLA has given him, and so it's thank you all for the successful implementation of this. I'm excited for third grade.
I want to affirm that as well. I know Mrs. Dang has a child at Broad Street, and I am a grandmom. I'm Gammy, so I have a second grader in Mrs. Messick's class. And I am basically PhD level dissertation conversations in the car with my granddaughter about the Civil War, about the human digestive system. And Gammy, we're ending the Civil War unit, and we're moving on to a new unit. Just that language from a second grader cracks me up. How do you know what unit you're going? Like, you know, what are you talking about? But I learned way too much about the human digestive system the last car ride in a really good way. And I said to her, you know, Adeline, do you like school? Gammy, sometimes school is like heaven.
Oh.
Right? So, wow, amazing. And it's just, they are excited by learning. They are engaged by learning, and that's a direct result of the dedication and the passion you have for creating an environment where children of all abilities can be successful, whatever that means to them. So it's fascinating. So thank you for all of that.
I have more detailed questions, so I won't ask them. I will say that I remember when we started the kindergarten academy, and I remember Mr. Hood at that time, he put out the dictate that these kindergartners would be writing 8 connected sentences.
I've heard the stories.
Whoa, that was like over the edge, so that didn't go well necessarily as an idea, but I believe that all the writing that I've seen up there today, I couldn't be happier about how much writing is happening across the different grade levels, because we know that's showing what they're able to actually process, learn, and so forth. I do have questions, but I'm not going to go crazy about like kid writing's gone, I assume. So there's some things, yeah.
Yes, and that's been a little bit of a struggle.
I'm sure. That was like at the heart and soul of kindergarten academy.
Yes, it's been a lot of conversation,
sure.
a lot of going to the coaches, asking, you know, for support.
Right.
How can we bring some of that back in? And so those are continued, you know, discussions and ways that we can bring that in mid-year when the students are ready for that.
Right.
But it's, you know, we heard a lot last year, you know, go slow to go fast. And one of our worries was, are they going to be able to write a sentence? Can they write a sentence? Can they write a sentence? They can write 4 sentences. They can write a story. Can they write a sentence? And a majority of my class can now write a sentence, and some of them can add conjunctions, because we've been talking about that as well. You know, how can you build onto that sentence with an and or a but or a so? So some of those kids eat up that challenge and are able to give those reasons why. So it's not necessarily the creative writing that we had seen in the past, but it's the informational writing. And what we're noticing is, because they all have that seat at the table, they're feeling more confident about what they're writing. Like with kid writing, there would always be a handful or so of students that would be like, I don't know what to write about. And it was a struggle. And now, because we're all teaching the same thing tier 1, they're hearing the same stories. And when they go to write something, they all have that knowledge that they feel more confident to go put it into writing form. We're still working on, you know, spaces and all the conventions of writing and how to be mindful of that. So they're not writing 4 and 5 sentences yet, but the quality of what they're writing is great, and they're adding conjunctions. So I do see that go slow to speed up. And even the notes that they're giving me now is not just, I love you, Mrs. Fissel, like they're writing sentences about it. They're pulling out whiteboards and writing during playtime. Yeah, that was never happening before. So there's a lot of great things about it, and I think there's still room to, you know, improve.
I guess the other question I have is differentiation. So we know there's a range in every classroom of kids that are well past grade level. What are we doing for them? As well as those kids that struggle, because what I hear, and I'm not in the classroom, so I don't know, it sounds like there's a lot more of tier one. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody's reading or hearing. I don't know if they're reading. Teachers are reading information. When are the kids doing their reading, and are they reading at their own instructional level at any time with guidance?
Yes, well, as kindergarten level, they start that reading about midway through the year. So everything at the beginning of the year is with the teachers doing the reading, and again, above their grade levels because we know that they can comprehend higher than they can read. So they're reading at their own text level, tier one, starting mid-year with that. And so the students that are struggling, that's when I implement and help with my instructional assistant. So some days with my instructional assistant, I'll have her work specifically with the students who need more one-on-one help, so I can go around and hear everybody. And other days I work with those students, and she pops around and does that. Even the speaking and listening part, we all find ways, and we're still ways to grow with the differentiation with the speaking and listening. The students that need more support, those are the ones that I check in with more often. I've taught them to listen and sometimes just repeat back what they're saying so that they can gain some pieces of that knowledge. So there's definitely areas that we're going to continue to learn and grow, but the differentiation is definitely happening. But there's the tier one instruction was definitely new for us, and I've been very happy with it, like very happy.
I think I understand the need for a product to allow our teachers to have time just to teach and have the information there in front of you. So I totally respect that, and I think it's very beneficial for kids to have that consistency, especially when you articulate across the different grade levels. I also think that this is where it comes down to the teacher then, to make it a wonderful curriculum, an environment where kids are excited to learn, because unless the teacher does that, this is not exciting to some children, and that's just how it is. So we need the teachers, and so thank you for all your leadership that you're putting forth, as well as all the things that you're doing in your own classrooms, because it makes all the difference in the world.
I will share at Broad Street, our librarian this year was a former first grade teacher, and she did pilot the program last year. So what she has done is when she knows what units we're on, she will pool additional materials in the library at all different reading levels for the students, and they check those books out, and that's what they're reading. So while we have the whole class tier one read aloud, they do have stuff that is catered to their reading level specifically, and she's done a wonderful job doing that. And we still do Book-A-Day at Broad Street, so our Book-A-Days are just our fun read alouds. They're tailored to our curriculum as well. So,
and I can speak a little bit to generally the sort of gifted or high achieving, and when we had our staff only day in January, one of the biggest pieces of feedback was teachers being grateful that we had our gifted teacher there presenting the difference between what is a high achiever and what is a gifted learner, and how do I make accommodations for them. And she was very clear with everybody that it's not just more, like, oh, you finished this, do something different. So I know teachers have been really trying a lot to have those students deepen their understanding, because the content that they're learning is new to everybody, just about everybody, unless they, have had a special interest in that topic before. The content is new. So what they can do with it is, go a little bit deeper with it. And so this year we've been playing around with opportunities for students to do things called Genius Hour, where they are independently learning more than CKLA told them about certain topics, and then creating projects on their own, so that it's not just, here's another worksheet, here's another assignment. Yes, that's so, and I know that Becky Morris, the other literacy coach, I know the instructional coaches, and I have all been sort of working aside, because we do see that is a population that, we have missed in the past. And so this content is really giving us a chance to kind of increase what we do for those students.
Thank you.
And thank you. I now have Conjunction Junction in my head. I've sung it about 25 times now. When we go into our executive session, I may break out in song. As Ms. Morgan has said, for some of us that have been around for a few years, we've seen programs come and the enthusiasm for the first year of the program. And then you don't hear anything about it, and maybe 2 or 3 years later, another version of a different program comes to replace that version. It is great to hear the excitement, to hear, I'm sure, the struggles that you have from time to time, but also the great accomplishments that you're seeing with it. And the kids working with it and bringing it home and having those long conversations in the car with their grandparents or their parents. It is good to hear that excitement and that connection that they're making to the programs that we're working on. So it gives a good feeling that we made the right decision and we're moving in the right direction. And anything that you can do to make kids enjoy reading and learn from the reading and improve their reading skills just pays 100-fold. So thank you for all that you do. Appreciate it.
You should be very proud of yourselves.
Thank you, ladies. So moving on from there, we'll go into facilities and the site update for the Mechanicsburg Middle School. Dr. Benz.
Right. We've got a few folks who are going to chime in on this particular presentation. So going back, you'll remember, I think it was at the end of January, is that what we picked up last week? We came forward and shared with you from our original facilities planning list that had been endorsed by the board several years ago. One of the projects that we had looked at was trying to fix the site layout at the middle school. And certainly that was a project that fell a little bit further down the priorities compared to the track at the high school, the stair towers at the middle school, and a number of the other projects that we've been doing the last few years. But it was time for that to make its way to the top of the list, and we began looking at some options for how we could improve the site there. So we did, after your approval, employ both Crabtree Rural, but also KCI, who's an engineering firm that helps with lots of different projects like this, and they helped us come up with a plan. We had brought some very preliminary sketches of that plan and some very preliminary benchmarks on pricing and that sort of thing to you back in January. Originally, our hope was to be able to continue the process moving forward this spring and being able to put something out to bid and potentially be done this summer. Ultimately, just as we continue to look at what approvals were going to be necessary and as we continue to dig into the planning, it became more obvious that it was just going to be too tight a timeline to try and get it done for this summer, and there really wasn't a necessity to continue to push it. While this is at the top of our priorities list, it's not an emergency priority either. So we, at that point, were able to slow things down a little bit and continue working through the planning of what the middle school site could look like. So we're back tonight to be able to share an update with you. This is really kind of a precursor to being able to continue to take next steps. Hopefully we've embedded and answered some of the questions that you had around the first time when we shared, and we'll take some more questions and thoughts here tonight. So the question that we embarked on with this was, how do we improve arrival, dismissal, and parking at the Upper Allen Township campus? And to remind you, we're talking about the total campus here, which is partially blocked out here, but we have both the Upper Allen Elementary, we've got Shepherdstown Elementary, and then primarily the concern that really has developed is at the middle school itself. And our goals were to be able to reimagine arrival and dismissal at the middle school, evaluate the existing traffic circulation patterns at the middle school, eliminate the vehicle backups and provide adequate parking for all school buildings. Vehicle backups that we're most concerned about are the ones that are happening out on Market Street in both directions, both from down here, but especially here at the light and extending, and actually over here as you're turning left into the parking lot to go into the middle school, that can back up there as well. So trying to reduce that backup and queuing capacity, increase the queuing capacity, but still being able to make sure that we've got adequate parking for all the school buildings. And then ultimately, as kind of an all-encompassing goal, is identification of proposed site improvements that will do those things for the project. So again, just to orient you, if you're not up there regularly with what the current site layout is, here is Market Street. This is, if you're coming up the hill, the first entrance going into the middle school, and then this is the light up here, which takes you into the middle school and then also into Upper Allen. So right now, we've got kind of 3 different zones. The bus pickup drop-off zone, which is specifically in this area. The buses line up around the circle. And we've got car pickup and drop-off zone that's here. And if you're familiar with it, you know that it's a snake that goes through this parking lot. It's actually double queuing all around here, and then reduces to a single queue here in the drop-off zone, and then folks exit again. This is a pretty tight lot in here. We've been able to make it through all this time without any issues in that tight lot, still having a double queue, and it is quite tight around those turns. And then, of course, shared staff event parking zone is in this side lot. You might remember that for a few years right after COVID, when we had a lot of drivers, we actually changed this to the bus zone, and these were both parent drop-off and pickup because we had so many cars. The problem then was that really put a lot of pressure on parking because all of these parking spaces are also accounted for within the parking needs at both Shepherdstown and Upper Allen. So that became a real issue, especially with parking at Upper Allen, because we continue to have more staff, which means more drivers at those buildings in addition to at the middle school. So that's the existing campus layout. So this is a picture of what you saw back in January. This particular version is almost exactly what we shared at that time. The next one that we'll look at on the next slide has the updates from continued conversation. But just to remind you of what the plan would be is to, instead of having queuing sneaking through this lot and ultimately, as we've seen, getting backed up here, it's to increase that queuing capacity. And the issue with the middle school and Upper Allen, which is true of some of our other buildings as well, specifically at Elmwood, is the building and everything is so close to the main road that there just is not enough space in front of the building to have all the queuing necessary. Especially with this being a large retention pond, we lose all this space for any kind of queuing. So you're really relegated to this space here. Well, if this is going to be buses, now you're relegated to just this space here for queuing. And the reality is that there's just too many cars, there's too many students at middle school, which will continue to climb, for this to be our total queuing space. So we really had to figure out how do we increase the amount of space for queuing for parent drop-off. And the best way to do that, similar to what we have at Elmwood, is actually pushing cars to the back of the campus and then bringing them back forward to be able to drop off before they leave again. So the idea is that cars would come in, they would move to the back of the campus and come all the way forward. You'd have double queuing ability throughout this entire zone, whether that's always necessary or not, obviously on any given day, we can see. But ultimately, cars would be moving through this whole zone. They wouldn't have to snake through here anymore. They could just come straight through, drop off in the same area, and then be able to exit the same way, exiting campus through there. So you've been able to increase the queuing capacity significantly. And some of the data is up there, and we can certainly talk about that as you have questions. In order to do that, we obviously lose some parking spaces. So we're looking to have this parking lot be able to offset those. It also, because much of this parking in this zone feeds specifically Upper Allen staff, this lot is still in close proximity for staff to be able to go either through the front or the back into Upper Allen Elementary. And as a side benefit to the whole thing, we've never before had parking close to these fields before, which do accommodate a number of middle school sports, being soccer, field hockey, track and field, and other events that are up there. So this parking will allow us to have, and you'll see in the next picture, some handicap spaces and parking accessible right to those fields for after-school events as well. So taking us to the updated drawing, so we're slightly tilted now, so I'll reorient you to the drawing, but this is the best way for it all to fit in a way that we can show here. This is Market Street. This is actually coming up the hill, even though it's going down the picture. So this is Market Street here, and this is the stoplight area in front of Upper Allen, which is here. Shepherdstown would be over in this area, and of course this is the middle school up in that section. So at this point you're not seeing the bus loop anymore. The bus loop is up towards the ceiling there. Cars would come down here and again be able to come into the same zone and be able to, similar to before, they're going to drive to the back. See the arrows here. Pull forward through, and again go around that lot, single lane drop off, and then be able to come out. Some of the updates from the previous drawing, in before, we weren't exactly sure how large this retention area would need to be to offset the increased pavement for the new lot. We now have a better idea of what that is, and we know that there's enough space still to be able to have PE classes out here. We also did some work, and I'll let the guys from KCI talk a little bit more about some of these specifics, but did some work to look at this crosswalk. So adding a crosswalk here, and it includes some safety measures there for students and staff who might be coming between Upper Allen and the middle school. Obviously for this lot, if students are or if adults are leaving this lot to go to the middle school, really this is adults only that are using this entrance back here, and would be leaving this parking lot to go across. But this is a crosswalk that we know obviously engages students a little bit more as well.
Not a bridge.
Not a bridge.
But
Or
will
a
a
tunnel.
person be there?
Say again?
Will a person be there to help that? Because
That's something we could certainly look at, to have a person there as well. I don't know that that's something that we've decided is necessary yet or not, but I'll let them talk a little bit more about the construction of it.
But for walkers, obviously, they can get either to Upper Allen or to the middle school without really being involved with traffic.
No, they'll walk right across there. Well, I know.
As they do now, yes.
They'll walk right through that traffic.
Are they on
I mean, they don't now.
same time?
They do, yeah.
Bell?
They go,
Bell
so that traffic doesn't go back to the back. They just go around.
There's still traffic that come through here all the
Coming
time.
back the other way, but not this way.
Coming into the lot. Because there's parents that drop off in here
And
for
back in
music
there.
and for all kinds of activities. So I'll let the guys describe anything more specific here with the big drawing, and then I can.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bitts. Good evening, Scott DeBell with KCI, and as with me is Ian Preston, also with KCI. I can walk you around the site plan a little bit, and then Ian will talk about the benefits of that crosswalk that we were just talking is a raised crosswalk, some of the added safety features that comes with that. So as Dr. Bitts had mentioned, we've taken the next step from that previous plan that you had seen with the aerial that sort of laid out the concept, to having a field survey done, creating a base map, and actually being able to overlay a design onto the site and seeing really what it would take to make this happen, and therefore being able to pull together a cost estimate to see, you know, what the anticipated costs are going to be. Really, essentially, this plan here up is north. So just to get our bearings, on the south side of the middle school, there's head-in parking facing the middle school. We're essentially removing that row of parking and making that extra wide driveway. So there's 2 lanes going west to east. I'm sorry, Doctor. It was on the south side of the school. Yep, over there. Yep. And so there are 2 11-foot wide lanes coming into the drop-off zone, and then a 20-foot lane leaving the drop-off zone. Gives you some still ability for someone to drop off at those other entrances and still have a bypass. The same concept was used all the way on the east side of the parking of the building and the east side of the parking lot closest to the retention pond. Yep, right there. Getting rid of that row of parking with the same concept, 2 11-foot drop-off lane, and then an 18-foot lane coming in the opposite direction as well. The benefit to this is that we're able to fit this concept into the same pavement footprint. So there's no additional pavement that is needed in those areas. There is some additional pavement needed that it doesn't show up very well in this black and white, but the solid gray within that parking lot is new pavement that will need to be added to it. Yep, exactly, right there, and then right there where there's an island. So it's, for the scale of the project, it's really not a lot of new pavement to make this happen. Obviously, the new parking lot that was discussed is new pavement. The idea was to lengthen the queue and then make it so it doesn't zigzag as much. It's much less, I think it can be easier flow for not having the zigzags and having it lengthened out. I think it also gets it more efficient. The queuing can be a little bit more compact when you're not turning as much. So just real roughly, I mean, we're anticipating that the drop-off area would be single cars and then, you know, double where there's 2 lanes, then single there. That it really would about double the queuing capacity from what's there now, and I think make it more efficient as well. We did show on the just coming in off of Market Street, the solid hatch. It's a little bit lighter and separated from there. We're proposing a mill and overlay, which is basically just taking off the top 1.5 inches of the asphalt and putting it back in, improving the finish of the pavement and extending the pavement life as well. With the stormwater, the existing parking lots that we're looking at modifying all drain to the stormwater pond along Market Street, between Market Street and the middle school. That will continue to happen with some of the grass areas that we're adding in the parking lot, kind of offsetting the pavement that's being added as well. So that's kind of a net wash. The new parking lot is all new pavement. That grass area still flows to the storm sewer systems in the existing parking lot. What we would be looking at doing is collecting that water in a little storm sewer system, directing it to that would be a surface pond, and then that surface pond would have an outlet structure that would choke back the water so it doesn't release at a faster rate than what it does now, and it would connect to the same storm sewer system that's in the parking lot now and make its way to the pond, to the existing pond as well.
And there you're talking about from this to here.
Yep. Exactly, thank you. With the parking lots, you can see that the diagonal hatch areas, the intent would be to add some islands that would be just I shouldn't say islands, they will be just pavement markings to keep, to help with the traffic patterns without creating additional obstructions for snow plowing with the curved islands and maintenance that comes with that, but trying to add some additional delineation to what's there with the additional vehicles, making some of those movements to provide some separation from that traffic flow from the parked vehicles. So with that, we know a big concern is obviously pedestrian traffic through the parking lot. And so one of the things we talked about was a raised crosswalk, essentially a crosswalk on top of a speed hump. And I'll let Ian talk about the benefits that provides.
So I've been involved with this concept since the start of it. I believe my coworker Chad Martin was here in January and presented some information. One of the points that he reiterated was that the school board was concerned with pedestrian safety in the parking lot area, which we thought was an excellent point. Something that we discussed and then added to the design that you saw is the raised pedestrian crossing. So typically and on public roadways, these have a couple criteria. You want to locate them where there is natural pedestrian paths, but large, crossing demand or value. And you want to have them somewhere where they can raise visibility of pedestrians. They also provide the traffic calming benefit where even if there was no pedestrian looking to cross, you would have to slow down to negotiate the speed table. And so with that in mind, these can be challenging on public roads just because of the potential speeds, making sure that pedestrians are all actually crossing at these forced areas. School campuses tend to be really good locations for these. And this location in particular, I think is very well suited for this raised pedestrian crossing. And so it provides that connectivity between the elementary school campuses and the middle school, connects to the existing and the proposed paths that are there. You can see the little bit of the plan there with the highlighted path in yellow. One of the features that I think we want to point out here is the refuge area, and so that would be between each leg of the parking lot or where traffic would be. And so, yeah, thank you, Dr. Bitts. So one of the nice benefits of this design is that pedestrians would cross one leg at a time, and they would have that area in between. I think there is some concern, I heard earlier, with the amount of the parent drop-off traffic that is now being forced all the way around the site. I think we would point out as well that that traffic today, as it proceeds into the site, is stop controlled there. And so one way to handle a pedestrian crossing is a yield. And typically yield compliance on public roadways with crossings can range from fairly high to very low. On a school campus, I think we generally see better compliance with yield-controlled pedestrian crosswalks. I think some of the reason is the people driving tend to be staff, they tend to be parents with kids, something like that. So we tend to see pretty high compliance with yield-controlled crosswalks, but for this leg, we actually have that stop in advance of it, which I think helps as well. So vehicles in the existing pattern today, they would be stopping there, and you've got great visibility to see if there's anyone looking to cross that first leg of the raised pedestrian crossing. Then you have the design of the speed table itself, which provides some kind of a taper. Again, most vehicles, depending on the design, are going to want to slow down to a very, very slow speed to negotiate that speed table. And then there's some additional signing we do. So if we can go to the next slide. There are some different options for these raised crosswalk. Looks like the walk was cut off there, but these are some of the signing options. So we would probably have post-mounted signs on either side in advance. That's your kind of neon green color, high visibility signing. We would probably go with the school crossing type that you see there, and then some kind of an arrow pointing to the crosswalk itself that would say raised crosswalk, not crosswalk. It got cut off in the caption, apologies. And then the crosswalk itself, we would typically go with some kind of a high visibility crosswalk design. I believe the crosswalks on Upper Allen Township streets adjacent to the school campus and other areas, I believe they're the ladder style crosswalks that you see there. And so we would typically recommend the continental or ladder style crosswalks. And those would be your high visibility thermoplastic pavement markings or something like that. Additionally, in the bottom right, you can see these are typical pavement marking patterns that are used in advance of the speed table or for the taper areas. And so you have those kind of yield pattern markings that are then put down on the crosswalk. Additionally, you can have these signs that are then put down in the actual crossing area. Actually, if you could back up to the previous slide, you could probably see a couple of these elements here. So if there's a concern or desire for even more kind of additional signing to promote the visibility, we can do the mounted kind of these stop for or yield for pedestrian signs there. You can see the ladder style crosswalk markings with those triangular yield markings. So there's quite a few options to promote the visibility. The best part about a raised crossing is just that it sets off the pedestrian crossing. Drivers can see it. Once they're familiar with the site, they're going to want to slow down whether or not a pedestrian is there. And that then gives the pedestrians the confidence to begin crossing, knowing that the driver will stop or yield. So, no, that was pretty much it. These are kind of the key features. I think with some input here, we can talk about any concerns or any desires with that signing and those pavement markings. But I do think this is a really good location for a raised pedestrian crossing. In particular, we like that you have the refuge area and you're breaking this up into two legs here.
My question is, you said you're going to put yield signs there. Why would you not maybe put stop signs there that, all the cars have to stop at that hump?
So in the existing direction coming from Market Street, that is a stop there today.
I mean, that seems a lot far away.
Yeah, so that's a little bit far away and for what you would say stop, at the crosswalk. So then typically closer you would have additional signing that would be yield at the crosswalk. Stop is also an option. Stop is definitely an option for pedestrians.
Why do you have that first stop sign though? Like, if they're going to have to
Well, that's an existing condition based on the elementary school driveways.
This way as well.
And so that's something we were looking to preserve from the existing traffic operations.
Because if people are asked to stop, slow down, like, for, 2 or 3 times before they get to the crosswalk, it's going to be, nobody's going to stop and slow down.
Well, we need people to stop there in order to turn the left into Upper Elm.
I think my point about the existing stop was that's the current pattern. Drivers are encouraged to stop. I observed them. I think most people are coming to more or less a complete stop there. That will give them the first, available. They'll be able to see if any pedestrians are looking to cross, and pedestrians would be able to start crossing. Typically, we would have the yield signing then, which is if you approach the crosswalk and somebody starts to cross, you would yield. Stop is also an option. I share your concern in general. Forcing drivers to make too many stops, at some point you start losing compliance. And so I think probably preserving the existing stop location there and then having the yield signing at the crosswalk, I think that would result in adequate compliance for the crosswalk, which is say very high, and I think that would give drivers good visibility of the crosswalk.
So if you come in and turn right, like you're next to the retention pond, there's a stop sign there too. Are we gonna get rid of that stop sign? That always seems like an awkward stop sign when you go into the middle school.
So I think you're referring to the bit that's still shown there on the plan.
Are you saying there's a stop sign here?
No. Further up at the top.
It's between the two lots.
Oh.
Between where the buses, it's the staff parking lot, at the end of the staff parking lot, before you would get to the circle where the buses come through and the other parking lot is.
That was something that probably was a little beyond the scope because we were keeping the changes in traffic control to, the circulation loop. So honestly, that wasn't something that we considered. We can certainly take a look at how that's signed today and if it makes sense to preserve that. I think you're saying you don't feel that stop necessarily makes sense
As many times as I've been in the middle school, it seems like, why am I stopping here? Before
Sure.
I go on, to pull up to the front of the school, that's all.
I think at very low speeds, some of these stops that may be signed and marked they're kind of redundant to some extent. We would hesitate to make changes to the existing circulation unless we look through it more, but we can take another look at that.
I mean, to me as a driver, there's no purpose to stop, really. I've always felt that way.
I think between those.
But I'm not a good driver.
Can we go back to the slide that was just up there? Sure, that one. No, that's fine. So there are 5 lanes of traffic, basically, right? Am I correct? Where the crosswalk is, people are gonna be coming and going all at the same time.
That is
at
correct.
dismissal time.
Yep.
And the Upper Allen gets out at 2:30?
Upper Allen gets out, I mean, their dismissal is just before that.
So they'll be, because the Upper Allen kids going over to the neighborhood over there will walk, Linden would walk through there. So they'll be
Well,
walking
the Upper
right
Allen,
from Upper Allen over.
you mean middle school students that live in?
No, I'm talking about Upper Allen kids now.
They wouldn't have a reason to go over to the middle school when they're going home.
My understanding is they walk, the Lindenwood kids walk there.
Oh, to
My understanding
Lindenwood. I
is
thought
to
you meant
walk.
Meadowview.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
sorry, Upper Allen, Lindenwood kids walk from Upper Allen across there and then back to that little.
There's probably some amount of them.
Yeah, so they're gonna walk in 5 minutes. Hopefully somebody's standing.
So if they're walking that way today, they're walking across, multiple lanes. We are bringing
Not that much traffic.
more traffic around. What we would, high visibility pedestrian crossings are truly kind of the gold standard for compliance. So I would suggest that the additional traffic is more than offset by the safety and design of the crosswalk for promoting that visibility. I would imagine the kids that are walking together are often in groups, and it's a rather concentrated period of egress from the school. So I think that helps as well. Beyond the signing and pavement markings, your next level of crossing, are flashing beacons, things like that, or crossing guards. And that would be kind of the next
I'd
level.
like to say something.
Elementary school kids are not allowed to be dismissed without a grown-up though. So they're gonna have grown-ups.
Without what?
Grown-ups.
Grown-ups, they're adult. Yeah, first, second, and third graders are not allowed to be released to walk home alone. They have to have, like, a teacher has to have eyes on a grown-up before the kid can leave the school grounds.
And I'd like to say in support of this, that the repeat customers you're gonna have in this parking lot, that's really the key, because once the first week of traffic goes through and they get used to what it is, there are very few people who are gonna be entering that parking lot who aren't used to the setup and are used to stopping at that raised crosswalk. Having been in that parking lot many times myself for pickup, you get used to whatever the pattern is, you get used to it's almost like automatic compliance for the people who are doing it. Maybe to your point, Mrs. Huff, that early in the adoption of this, the first week of school perhaps, just to be sure that people are complying, just to kind of set the tone, because once they are in the habit of doing that, it's going to be pretty much, I think, more automatic compliance through the year, because they've been in that parking lot 50, 100 times maybe by the time that.
Typically, within the first week, we're all hands on deck anyway.
So what if we find out 3 weeks later that there seems to be a problem there? What would Plan B be?
We could start paying someone for a duty to do that.
Position there.
I think staff's always an option if it came down to it. I think the other thing, and I respect the 5 lanes of traffic, I can certainly appreciate that. The way we stagger our times though too probably would have an effect there. So if you think about the tardy bell, I think at Upper Allen probably is 7:45 in the morning, and then the middle school is largely, I think, 8:15, 8:20, somewhere in there. Think about the high school, middle school. And then likewise at the end of the day, they're dismissing at 2:30, 2:35 probably, before the middle school is dismissing at like 3:20 or something. 3:25, thank you. I get all the buildings a little mixed up. The other aspect, so I think the staggering of times probably helps with the traffic of the different patterns of the buildings. I think the other thing with the raised pedestrian crossing, and Ian kind of alluded to it a little bit, there's certainly certain parameters around it when it's out on a municipal roadway or state roadway, where I think, Ian, you had shared with Dr. Betts and I and the team, we have a little more flexibility around it because it's our site. So like how wide it is, how tall it is, not that we want cars driving over a 3-foot, hill, but certainly some flexibility in how we design it, because it would force, I mean, when you see some of those bigger traffic tables, people slow down to a crawl.
I mean, I think some of those lanes of traffic, having a middle schooler would already be generally stopped and moving very slowly. But I am concerned about parents who are distracted in the morning. Where's the kid's lunchbox? They might be driving, not looking where they're going. I'm also really concerned about that walkway being so close to the corner after the drop-off. Because, sometimes you're there, you need to get the kid off, and then okay, I gotta get out of here so more people can get parked to drop their kids off. If they come around that corner and they miss the crosswalk, that could be a problem. Because at that point, the traffic speeds up, I think, even though it's still single lane. So I mean, I think at the very least we should consider the beacons, like lit beacons, just to, again, visibility, like you said, is key in this.
And I think that, you're talking about distracted drivers. What if somebody drops off a kid and says, I gotta be at work in 2 minutes, and they don't want to drive all the way up there and all the way back down? Can they make a shortcut and anywhere there?
So this is all grass here, and this is turned this way specifically so that if you're coming this way, I guess you could take some fancy maneuvering to get your car turned that way and then turned again. And then obviously cars will be parked within the lot.
Yeah,
Now, obviously,
I'm
we
just
know
more
it.
concerned more at the front end there.
Well, there's no way to get into the lot this way, because this will be coned off as it is now. So if you turn this way, you can't get into the drop-off area.
So there's no way
I
to get into
think
that
she's
parking
also
lot.
talking more, if you go up at the top, you've got the single arrow at the top. They can't come down as they're exiting over here. They've dropped the kid off.
They're talking about the front corner of the middle school, I think, Andy, by the,
They've dropped the child off here, and they're in a rush to get out, so they can't just come down and go out this way. They are forced to go along the face of the building and down around that way. So they can't just cut right
Yeah, I
across.
just want to make sure there's no ability to cut and come straight to the front again.
I would say no, but I would also say that at every one of our buildings, people find creative ways to not do what we've asked them to do. Part of that is, what are the things that we can build into the drawing that helps to reduce that? But then the reality is, you could make this all very, very, very structured. You could make all of these cement. You could put a cement barrier in here. You could do that in other spaces too, to avoid that kind of thing. But then you've got now issues for maintenance because you've got cement all over the place. You've actually reduced the amount of parking because now you're taking that up with some of these islands and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good mix of some control over it, but also maximizing still the space that we still have.
Just
I'm
to,
not the expert.
so the point on the right turns, and right turns, especially at signalized intersections, that's one of our biggest concerns with pedestrians. Car going to turn right doesn't see or doesn't look adequately in the crosswalk. So I think here again, we are stop controlled. The speed table's location, I think, is gonna force drivers to slow down again as they're negotiating the turn. And from where they would be stopped at the end of the drop-off lane, they have definitely adequate sight lines. The one thing that could be considered is pushing the second leg of the crosswalk a little bit further to the left on the plan. And so that's a design that's sometimes used. So the refuge area would still kind of connect them, but you would push that second crosswalk a bit to the left. So that could be considered. I don't believe there's any reason we couldn't do that for stormwater or otherwise. The potential downside there is when you redirect pedestrians out of their quickest possible path, at some point people might just run across the street and not use the crosswalk. But we could look at shifting it just a little bit to the left.
And what if the drop off, I mean, right now it stops like right there's that line right before the corner. I mean, what if you can pull them up to have them stop in front of the crosswalk? Because at that point, there's a staff member there, basically say, get up here, park here. And at least that stops traffic while that line disembarks. And then, okay, now you go, I don't know, just kind of, you guys are.
You're talking about pushing the stop location for the end of the drop-off.
Right,
lane.
basically have them stop right in front of the crosswalk so they know, okay, I gotta wait until these people cross. At least at that point, they're stopping, they're not going around the corner. And it gives like a couple extra cars.
Yeah.
In the drop-off.
The only immediate challenge there would be where we have also the stop bar shown for staff parking that might be leaving that parking lot. And so we would be, one of them would be forced into some kind of a yield condition, or we have that stop, double stop. But it could be considered.
Yeah, I like the idea of moving it a little bit. That might give a little bit extra time to see the visibility.
And I think staffing too probably plays, again, a factor there, even because that ramp, that goes heading up toward the main entrance, there's usually staff on that ramp anyway. And so even like what we do at Elmwood, the staff help often manage where people start, when they go, and that sort of thing.
And really with it being close to that corner, one staff could come up here, hey, wait a second, you know, they might be able to indicate, you know, play crossing guard a little bit.
Which would control some of that traffic.
If anybody wants to practice these speed bumps coming to the Winding Hill development.
That's right.
From the front gate to the back gate, you have
Oh, yeah.
6.
I missed one of those once.
They work. You can't go over 25.
Some good considerations. We want to make sure we take. So this was the original estimate that was shared at the time of our very preliminary design work. Looking at the improvements, looking at the new parking area, mill and overlay of some of the other select areas for some consistency purposes, but also for some places that just need a little bit of rehab while we're there. So at the time, we were looking at this potentially being $750,000 to $1 million. With the more specific estimate that we dug into, we're a little south of that right now, which is great. Obviously pre-bid and all those kinds of things, but looking at a project subtotal of 683 and then with contingency 735.
Does the loss of the baseball field, I mean, is that used quicker, or is that more than gym class?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
There's definitely a need for some green space there, which has been able to be preserved and actually hopefully enhanced a little bit by the drainage issue that exists there right now. It gets pretty swampy in that field right now. So as part of moving the dirt and all of that, they're able to taper that a little bit to hopefully help with some of the drainage that exists. But there will be enough space there for
I just gotta ask this because I know when we did the addition to the back, with all the big concern with the fire trucks being able to get around everything, so this is not hampering their ability to get anywhere.
No, that
Because
that driveway
they still get
around
to the
the
back.
entirety of the back will remain open. And in fact, we're anticipating using that for van pickup and drop off in the back there. In fact, you can see it there. It says van pickup in really little letters and arrows. So yeah, that will remain open through there. There'll be a stop sign here controlling people coming out. That'll still be open.
Just remember that.
Yeah, at one time there was the barrier that was put here, but it's never closed because of that very reason. So next steps. Mr. Long, you want to take
Sure.
Yeah.
So we had gotten initial approval there, as Dr. Bitts shared earlier, to conduct the study, at least preliminarily, to say what are some options, right, with the site. From there, continued to work on design. So that January work session, kind of looking at where we were with the preliminary proposal. We've further vetted that preliminary proposal, hearing some of the concerns of the board and some of the feedback, and so we're coming today for that update. And then as we move into the summer months here, continuing design work, continuing to kind of solicit feedback and make final adjustments, which would then lead to permitting and approvals in the summer months and in this fall. And then that would culminate ultimately with a bid potentially in January 2027, and then allow this to be a construction project for summer of 2027. So I'll say continue, with the board's blessing, continue design on where we're at and continue to move forward, hoping to then get to some permitting and approval conversations with both the township and the county, because I think it is going to need some additional permitting, MPDS.
So we don't have PennDOT's not going to be involved with the resurfacing at the front?
No.
Sure.
We've had some initial discussions with the township and the county conservation district, and so I know KCI's done a nice job of navigating those discussions. I think some of the trying to align all of our efforts is based on the design work and where we've been to date. Now, as this design comes into better view, then we can have some even more in-depth conversations with the township and the county. But based on some of the initial discussions, I think we feel good about this timeline and then really targeting the summer, next summer, and then just working our way backward, which is how we kind of came up with the timeline here.
So no immediate action for the board, but we'll be taking the feedback and thoughts that we heard tonight and continue to design through moving forward.
Thank you for your time and expertise. I think it's really exciting with being a middle school dad, dropping off. It's definitely gets busy in the mornings, and so it's great to have the extra capacity and clean up Market Street a little bit. So.
I know parking lots aren't as exciting as the language arts programs that you have here, but
Yeah, I like parking.
We're engineers. It's exciting to us.
Thanks for sitting through all that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. That was good stuff. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next. Item 7 under personnel, the substitute teacher compensation.
Yeah, Dr. Betts. This one I think is probably pretty brief, but just as I think about our different compensation structures, I always come top of mind back to competitive compensation, the idea of competitive compensation and how do we recruit and retain staff, high quality staff. And some of those high quality staff are our substitute teachers because they help fill in all the gaps during the school year, and the importance of, those are our adults in front of our students, and how does that impact our programming. Substitute teacher compensation, substitute teachers, like certain other positions, have been pretty hard to recruit in years of late, right? Like bus drivers and food service employees. And so I've appreciated the board's commitment to continue to look at these different groups and say, where are we with compensation of these individuals? And so as part of those processes, Dr. Betts and myself, with Mrs. Statham, Mrs. Ely, our HR department, and our business office, are always looking at our different compensation structures to say, where do we stack up against other school districts in the area? So what's the landscape of that look like? Are we positioned where we want to be? We probably shouldn't be the highest pay, but we also don't want to certainly be the lowest pay, and then we're getting poached from other schools in the area. And so within that, as we've looked at our compensation structure for substitute teachers, you can see everything in black is really as it exists today. And so we have some different categories for substitute teachers. There's the regular daily sub rate. For those that are subbing with some frequency, maybe 5 or 10 days or more, they're getting an incentive in addition to their sub rate. There's long-term substitutes, so those are individuals taking on assignments maybe 60 days, maybe 90 days. That compensation looks a little different for those individuals because of the additional commitment, not only in terms of time, but in terms of the extra stuff that comes along with that type of long-term assignment. And then building substitutes are on a 45-day frequency and appointed as such. So I think when we look at the landscape, we're pretty comfortable about where we fall within the IU, especially when we look at Cumberland County. But the one area that we've come back to in talking with our principals, with other administrative leaders and teacher leaders, is what do we do about those medium term, I'll call them assignments, right? So it's something more than a day-to-day sub, but it's not reaching 60 or 90 days. And so in those situations of 10 and 20, 30 days, they might be in a classroom for a month, 2 months, and now they're not just coming in, and I don't mean just, but they have something beyond the daily substitute requirements. And so they probably are getting into lesson planning. They're probably doing great. Well, they would be helping with grading and parent phone calls and all those things that are happening as part of this assignment. And so we felt like there was a need within our structure to try to recognize those individuals because they're not quite reaching 60 or 90 days, but they certainly are doing something more than day-to-day substitutes. And so our recommendation ultimately, based on our current structure, based on how other schools are compensating different types of substitutes, is in the red there, that anything over 10 days, 10 consecutive days, but less than 60, because that's the next structure yet within this, would be granted an additional 20 days for assigned planning and grading responsibilities, and that would be as determined by the building principal and working with both Dr. Bitts and Dr. Bowman. So just because you work 10 days doesn't necessarily mean you automatically get it. I think the question comes into play, what are the details of that assignment, and that would be as recommended to both Dr. Bitts and Dr. Bowman.
So they're gonna get the $250 plus another $20 a day.
Yes, so they would get the daily sub rate, and then because of the frequency, they would get the incentive. So I like to look at the incentive as more of a frequency based, where it's not so much about the additional duties they're doing, but they're committing more time to us in the form of 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. I think then, in my mind, as we've talked about it as a team, that next step yet is, okay, so now they've not just committed to the frequency, but now they've agreed and they're committing to these additional responsibilities in the form of parent phone calls and grading and planning and things of that nature. And so we're trying to kind of build what does that look like in terms of a fair compensation for individuals, knowing that the day-to-day subs could be subbing 5 and 10 days and getting the incentive just like these individuals, but these individuals might be having some additional responsibilities being asked of them. And so how do we make sure we treat people fairly, recognizing the district there's costs associated with it, so what's a fair proposal?
The other piece I'll add, certainly treating them fairly is an important part, but the other reality is that our substitutes aren't the same substitutes that we had 10, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, we used to have substitutes that were coming in and they were excited to show their stuff and they were going to do anything and everything to be able to show us that, hey, yeah, give me a full-time job, here's what I've got. Our folks are wonderful, and we have lots of folks who come in and serve us well, but many of them are on the other side of their career where they are retired from other positions. They're not doing it to also do planning at home and grading and those kinds of responsibilities. So at the moment, for these extended absences where we have folks coming into sub, we're having to pay our other teachers to do those responsibilities. So a department chair or a colleague that teaches the same class. So we're paying this money either way. We're just right now putting that burden on our other staff members who have their own teachers' classes to teach. So this allows us the opportunity that if someone is subbing and they're capable of doing it and they're willing to do it, that we'll give them a little bit more compensation to have them do it as opposed to putting that burden on other teachers.
So one of my best friends is a retired teacher, but she retired for the summer, then she went back to work and she couldn't stand not teaching, but she's assigned as a substitute to a building in Camp Hill School District for the entire year.
So that would be similar to our building substitutes.
So I see that
we believe we're required by law to do that every 45 days. Everybody interprets that a little bit differently, so I won't question their interpretation, but essentially our building substitutes are a substitute who comes to us every single day. Typically, they're assigned for 45 days and they're re-upped for the next 45 and then in 45 days. So most times they're here for the whole
And we're still paying this internally as opposed to using an outdoor.
Correct.
Outside source.
I mean, I like the idea of 5, 10, it's almost like a loyalty program, because I imagine substitute teachers could go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But if they say, well, I can do 5 days, 10 days, that gives me the incentive. I look at that, at the number of how much they get paid, maybe I come from a different career, and that pays differently, but I'm like, wow, to be a substitute teacher for a day, it just seems low to me. But, I guess you don't have to love it. Is that the idea? Like you said, retirees that might be looking for additional income and stuff.
It's certainly a balance because we try to avoid the arms race. Because when you look at all the districts, we're pretty good at staying a little bit above the average. And then ultimately, when you do adjust the rate to factor in some of these incentives, it does increase the rate considerably. I think if you do 10 days a month, if you end up doing some of the planning and grading, I think it's upwards of about $180 a day ultimately, if you're doing those other incentives.
So if you're hitting some of those other benchmarks, it is certainly more than just $133 a day, as Dr. Pitt said.
Yeah.
So the 2 building subs that you're talking about
Per building, yes.
per building are getting the $2,000 bonus, but they're not going to get the $250 too, are they?
Correct, but they could be eligible for the $20 if they, as a building sub, go into one assignment for a period of time longer than 10 years.
I feel like we've talked about that idea for a long time, so I think it's time. We've always had that little gap in there for people that are doing it, and that planning takes a lot of time, because you can't do it during the school year.
So the building sub still gets paid that $133 rate per day, is what they are on for 45 days, is that, we following that?
So they would get the 133 and then having completed the 45-day assignment, and they're allowed to miss a couple of days in there.
Yeah, it's 2 days or something.
They would get the $2,000 bonus. And so we have taken it down to that level of detail, and I want to respect our time, but with all these different, we've thought about all the different combinations and charted them all out to see like how do they all stack up against each other, and are they equitable? So if you get a building sub, what's your kind of composite rate look like as compared to someone that's doing 5 or 10 days, or someone that might be doing 5 or 10 days with this assignment? And so we've tried to look at that between all the tiers, and so that is part of what we looked at. So.
Okay. Could move that forward for approval. Very good. All right. Moving into number 8, policy. First one is first reading of a new board policy on tax assessment appeals.
Yeah, so I'm going to pretty quickly turn this over to Mr. Longwell and Mr. Pahoka, but this is a policy that has come about in a number of our neighboring districts who our districts have had some success with. As you might remember, we've had a number of instances over the years where different properties have come forward and said that their assessed value should be lower than what they've been paying taxes on, and we've had to work through that process. And ultimately, in most situations, we end up negotiating a middle ground, but there's some reduction in their tax assessment, and hence then a reduction in the amount that we're collecting from that owner. There is opportunity under the law to be able to do the reverse of that, where we as the district would look at some certain properties that are sold for an amount of money and recognize that based on the previously assessed value that they're being underassessed, and that their tax rate should be a little bit higher than what, or their tax collection should be higher than what it was. So there's obviously a lot of specifics with that in the legal and policy realm, and that's why I think these two are here to talk some more about it.
I thought once a house is sold anyway, that's the new rate, and then like.
So there are, it's a good question. There's really the market value and the assessed value. And so the assessed value of all the properties, the county can choose, each county across the whole state can choose when they do assess. And so in Cumberland County, I think we were 2010 or 11, 10, thank you, Barry. Really then, as Dr. Bitts shared, there's kind of a two-way street with assessment appeals, right? So if your assessment is on the books at this amount, as a property owner, you can say, well, I think that's too high, it should be lowered, and then there's a process for that. Conversely, the school district or municipalities can say, it's going the other direction. We think because of the market value and what the assessed value is, that the assessed value should actually be higher, and that can be appealed as well. So you can appeal to make it go down, which would largely be your taxpayers, or it could be appealed from a municipal perspective because we're saying, you know, because of the sales value, the market value, the assessed value itself should be higher. And we have a calculation in the slide deck here to kind of toggle back and forth between those two. But maybe as we jump into the presentation here, Gareth and I can walk through a little bit of what this looks like, some definitions, what a process looks like, an example calculation, which I think gets to your question maybe. And so Dr. Bitts and the three of us will just kind of tag team the presentation here this evening. So you sometimes hear them as district initiated property tax appeals. Sometimes you also hear them as what are called reverse appeals. And so in Pennsylvania, a reverse appeal refers to a property assessment appeal that's actually initiated by a local taxing body, typically a school district, because often the municipalities will defer to the schools in the state to kind of lead some of these conversations to ultimately increase the assessed value of an undervalued property. So some of what that really looks like in practice then is a property's assessed value is lower than what is warranted based upon the property's fair market value. And we'll talk a little bit later about how you toggle back and forth between the market value and the assessed value to know, well, how do we know the assessed value isn't as high as what should be warranted? And the low assessment results in less tax revenue than would otherwise be appropriate for the taxing entity, in this case, the school district or local municipalities. So the policy itself, I appreciate Attorney Boca's preparation of that for us. He's been in the background helping both Dr. Bitts and I look at this through the spring. We've been also talking with our real estate valuation consultant because that individual, Pat Noon, works not only with Mechanicsburg but a number of other Cumberland County districts. And so there's a team there that we would employ to go about this. And even as we look at the policy, the new policy, the 50,000 foot view, there's a couple pieces to it that I would just point out here this evening. One, you have to set it, the board would have to set an appeal threshold. So we wouldn't just be appealing every property sale that comes through in the school district. We would be looking to say there should be an expectation of generating at least $10,000 in additional real estate tax revenue for that single property based on the sales data and based on where their assessed value is. So that's an important aspect, and that must be consistently applied, which is the third bucket there, consistently applied that all properties are treated uniformly as required by law. And so we can't just pick, this type of property or that type of property, or, oh, we like the Giant, but the Taco Bell isn't paying enough, So it's got to be a consistent standard, which is generated through that threshold of 10,000, but also not just hand-picking different property types.
So you're talking about businesses as opposed to personal homes?
It could involve residences, it could involve commercial, it could involve industrial, although we don't really have many industrial. But I would say at $10,000, that's a pretty significant tax bill. And this is a change of $10,000 on top of whatever the individual world business or whomever's tax bill already is. And we'll talk a little bit about how that translates in this meeting and some additional conversations to come. But that's kind of the crux of the policy, really, is the threshold consistently applied and the opportunity to engage in district-initiated tax appeals.
What difference would 10,000 be according to the rules that we have?
I think I have it on a later slide. Off the top of my head, I think it was between $500,000 and $600,000 of assessed value. So it would be a pretty significant increase.
So that's really fix your house up.
Yeah.
Water slides.
Yeah.
Well, if your house could increase in value 10,000 a year, that's not very. I mean, you can hit the 10,000.
Well, it's 10,000 in tax revenue, so you have to increase the value of the property by $500,000, $600,000.
And it's also assessed value, so you got to gross it back up, true it back up to market value. So yeah, it probably is better to maybe visualize it. We'll come back to the process on that. All right, here we go. So an example here, and this is, I think, kind of where we're getting to with the questions, and they're good ones. There's two columns here, and really what we were trying to reconcile is in the first column, that might be a current assessed value. So an assessed value for a property, let's just say it's $1,818,000. Based on our millage rate, that generates an annual real estate tax of $32,237. If we saw, hey, that property just sold in the last 2 or 3 months and it sold for $3,500,000, let's apply the common level ratio. And not to bore you with math, but I know there's some people in the room that do enjoy math. But 1.47 is the common level ratio. You can also look at the mathematical reciprocal of that, which is like 0.678. 6.8. Thank you, Gareth. So there's a couple ways you could look at it. You could either take the assessed value, divide it by the 1.47, or you could just multiply it by the 0.68. Either way, it leads you to an implied assessed value of $2,380,000. And so in that example, the assessed value, this was a little bit what Mr. Kickline was asking. If you look across on the assessed value, that would be that $562,000 probably. But from a market value perspective, it's even higher than that, right? You'd have to gross it back up. So it's probably $700,000 or $800,000, I bet.
What's the common level ratio?
No, that's
what you can apply to the market value to derive.
There is a technical answer. Maybe I'll let Derek say that.
You're right. It's the formula you apply to calculate the assessed value based on the market value, or vice versa. So in Cumberland County right now, your assessed value in theory should be about 68% of the market value. So if we're talking about sales price, market value, then we have to do that math there to translate back to what's the assessed value. that the property owner would actually pay their tax bill. That's the assessed value, not the market value.
It's really, this is only ever triggered at the time of the sale where you can determine the market value.
We'd be looking at that sales data, yes. Yeah.
So we're not gonna go around.
No.
Picking.
And this is, the common level ratio is different for all the counties in the state because the closer it is to 1, the more closely aligned your market values are with your assessed values. So the longer you get away from a reassessment, the higher the number goes. So Juniata County, I'm not sure what the number is, but it's probably like more than 3. Where ours is 1.47 because it's only been 10 years. And so there's a closer alignment between those assessed values and market values.
And we're not going back to look at the last 10 years to try and recoup for the last 10 years. It's just, it sold this year, so we're looking to increase that tax base for this year.
I appreciate the question because it's a good preview here. We would probably look back maybe to July. Gareth and I talked about that. We have to be consistent in how we do it, but generally speaking, if all the property appeals have to be filed by September 1st, we would be probably looking back 12, 13, 14 months, whatever that window is, to say what sales data that happened during that period of time. We'd be applying the common level ratio between the market and assessed value and then looking for that $10,000 change. So it's not going to be 1,000 properties. I mean, it could be as few as 2, 3, 4, 5, order of magnitude. It's not going to be a significant number. So the 12-month, 14-month valuation period, there's a little bit of flexibility for us administratively there, but ultimately recalculating the assessed values, identifying the underassessed properties, and then working with both myself and Dr. Bitts, Gareth as our school solicitor, and then a real estate evaluation consultant, Pat Moon, to be filing those appeals by September 1st would be our goal.
So,
Sorry, skip it. That was a pretty short one, but if there's additional questions.
So going through all this and paying for all the services to have people reevaluated and reassessed and calculating how much more money do you think we can come up with?
I would hate to hazard a guess because it could change year to year, but I think it's about maintaining the assessed values. And so maybe in 1 year, maybe it might increase 50,000, but that 50,000 is on the tax rolls then moving forward. It's just not 1 year, it's cumulative. And then in year 2, maybe it's another 30,000, but then you have that cumulative, well, it's 50 plus 30, so now in year 2 it's 80. And then, as you continue to implement that, does it just stack up all together? I mean, there's definitely a cumulative effect to it all. And so I don't think there's anything out there that's going to be $500,000 in 1 year. But I do think there's some like 10,000 that, we definitely would have if you look at it.
There is some costs and there's some legal costs.
There's some one-time, I won't say one-time, but probably $1,000 to $2,000.
Yeah, that's what we estimated, working with other districts, 1,000 to 2,000. You have to pay filing fees to the county, the appraiser consultant, our fees. So it's a one-time cost, all in $1,000 to $2,000, which is why the threshold is 10,000, because we're trying to recognize, there's some cost in doing this. Sure. But after that, it remains on the tax rolls rolling
If that
forward.
property appeals that though, now we're paying more legal costs.
Right, if the owner would have the opportunity to appeal a result from the assessment board to the county level, which is always an option. It's even an option now if you would appeal your assessment, you would pursue it to the county level. So that is a possibility, you're correct.
So the school district won't have any more legal costs?
Depends if the board would authorize us to continue to pursue that appeal or not at that level. That would have to come back to the board for further direction. This process that we're talking about is through the county assessment board level only. So they're due September 1st. The county schedules hearings October, November timeframe, and then they issue decisions right on the spot, actually right there in the assessment hearing. So this process, the expenses take us to that point. If there would be direction to pursue it further, that would be another conversation to evaluate pros and cons, costs, likelihood of recovery, all of that on a case-by-case basis.
But it seems like this is fairly tight in a sense because, well, it's sold for a certain amount, the assessed value is a certain amount. Anybody can always appeal, make an issue out of it.
Yeah. It ultimately comes down to, was it an arm's length transaction, sale? So property is assessed at $100,000 and I agree to pay $200,000 for it. That suggests to me that's what the market value is, and then it's on the owner to prove otherwise. And they'll have a chance to do that. They'll be able to come to the hearing and offer reasons why they think, no, that's not the market value, and then the assessment board issues their own decision at that point. Cumberland Valley and South Middleton are already doing this. Carlisle and Camp Hill, same thing, have just approved this policy this spring, and we'll jump into this process here this fall.
So if somebody new wants to come into this area to build something, it's not gonna be a red flag, stay away from Mechanicsburg School District, because we do this, but anywhere in the local area, it's also this.
Most of the counties doing this, or will be at this point, and it's not really builders, it's purchasers. And you make your decision, you look at what the current value is, and if I'm agreeing to pay substantially more, you should be aware you're going to potentially face an appeal in almost any school district in the county.
And I think, especially for new development, I wouldn't necessarily see it as a deterrent because I think those new buildings and properties are coming on the tax rolls at a more true value, if you will. The risk is probably more associated with the further you get away from the last time there was a reassessment, and older properties, potentially very large, commercial properties or whatever type of property type, that there's more of a discrepancy there. So.
Any other questions? Do we have approval to move this forward to the next board for second reading? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Move on to item 8.02, first reading of revised board policy 105 curriculum.
I'll take the next three.
Okay.
Round it up. I'm hoping that you will find these minimal at best. Nonetheless, they are recommendations that we feel will, best our practice. So with the first one here in 105, really the changes that we're recommending adhere to some of the mandates that have come down over the last few years regarding what we must do on events like Constitution Day, Citizenship Day, Arbor Day, Bill of Rights Week, and how we approach the education of our students during those events. So that's the one change that you'll see there. And then also there is a mention of pilot programs, but I would argue that you heard about the model that we followed and that companies like Amplify would use us as a model. So I would argue we're not going to change what we're doing. This just notates that we would continue doing it in the manner that we have with the ability and the board support of conducting pilot programs with us updating you along the way with the blessing of the superintendent.
Was that a recommendation that was made? I was going to ask about that because that wasn't part of the description. Was that a recommendation made by PSBA
Yep.
or is that just?
Yeah, it was in the PSBA recommendation.
Thanks.
So that's 105.
Okay, thank you. Any objections at moving that forward? All right, we'll move it forward for a second reading. How about 204?
204, you'll see in green the mention of us making sure that people in parental relation are signing off, that they understand our attendance. I believe we're already doing that. So we're just reinforcing that in policy. And then at the very end, you'll notice the one change now is that the state is suggesting and saying that students will not be able to leave us and enroll in a charter school if they're already determined that they are habitually truant in their current placement. So that really is the significant change to that policy.
Any questions, concerns, objections for moving that forward?
I like that one though.
Is that?
Cybers are challenging that in court, so we'll see.
Does that include guardianship and guardianship? So am I looking at the right one?
In 204?
Yeah, 8.03. It says that someone with a parental relation needs to.
Yeah, so they're basically just ensuring that somebody's saying that we have read and understand the requirements for your attendance policy.
So they're not this guardianship.
That's parental relation.
Okay.
Yes. Whoever has the educational rights, if you will, okay. The legal rights.
One more time. Any objections to moving that forward? All right. We'll move on to policy 217.
Again, minimal changes here. Really, the stipulations are addressing some students that may fall into some circumstances such as homelessness, or students that are of military families that may face some hardships in meeting graduation requirements should they move into the district in an opportune time, and that we are, going to do our due diligence to support the graduation of those students based on their circumstances. We're not changing any of our graduation requirements to that end, but we would support the efforts to make sure that they graduate in good faith.
Can I just ask a question about the graduation requirements? This is one, if kids take the advanced math classes at the middle school, right now we don't give them credit for that, but could we if we wanted to?
That would be a significant change.
I know. They're taking the advanced classes then.
Well, we have students at the high school that are taking lower classes, and we're still giving them credit
That's all.
at the high school. So
Does that make sense?
I would say it does now, but if we started giving students at the middle school credit for classes just because it's taught at the high school, then it would seem that those students at the high school taking middle school classes, then we should start not giving them credit.
Well, so how do you view from the high school, I know, because you've been through, how do you view that? Like, what is the criteria that makes it credit worthy? Because you're at a high school and a high school?
Because you're at a high school, yes. Because ultimately, if we're gonna start awarding credit, this could be quite a good debate.
I was just curious if we could do it. We can stop there, but I might bring it back later.
You can, some districts do, I would.
Oh, do you really?
I would, oh yeah.
Oh, how about that?
I would strongly recommend we don't, but that can certainly be a debate for another day.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Mrs. Huff, in my experience too, we've had this debate. Trust me, as a high school principal, I did when we revamped our graduation requirements in my previous position, and ultimately what it came down to is students have the opportunity to be enriched in middle school should they choose to, and by taking those advanced classes, they're taking that option. Ultimately, you start high school in 9th grade and you have 4 years with us. In that time, we're saying, regardless of what you've done before, X amount of credits need to be fulfilled in order for us to say that you graduated successfully and we fulfilled our educational obligation to you. So in essence, I would argue that regardless of what they take prior, we're still saying that while you're in high school, these are the requirements and the credits that you're required to take. How you fulfill those is going to be different based on the various levels of the kids, whether they take them through level 1 classes or level 4 classes. It's going to be based on their needs, even based on their plans after high school. And I think more and more we've gotten better at that argument to the point we even met with the CTC last week, Dr. Bitson, Mr. Reedy, and myself, to look at how we can maybe even manipulate a schedule there to open up some more possibilities for our kids with a potential new schedule at MASH for 27-28. So we're getting better, I think, at providing flexibility and opportunities for kids in high school to fulfill those credits that align directly with their plans for graduation.
That would be at the heart of I think, what I'm getting at, because when kids make those decisions as 6th graders to take an advanced math class, do they really know at this point that they're going to need more math or not? And long ago, and I don't know how it is now, that if you had to maintain the order of math classes, there was no stopping.
To some degree, yeah.
When you go to high school, you were going to be continuing in calculus and Calc 1 and Calc 2, and not everybody's ready for that, to do that. And now maybe there are more choices, back to what you were saying, if there are other choices for those kids in math to meet those credits, then that wouldn't be a concern.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking about a gifted student or a gifted IEP and they're gifted in the area of math. I've had that students have taken even college credits, like they've gone to
Right.
taking an
So we
a
have-
class through Stanford, if you
So
will,
we have more options.
like MIT. I
Well,
mean,
I'm
these kids
actually-
that are at that level.
I'm actually talking about the kids that thought they were gifted and took it in sixth grade.
Right.
And when they get to the high school, they're like, I don't really need this math, I don't wanna take it, I want to take Calc 2 when I get to high school,
Mhm.
but there are no other there were no other options long ago, but now there are. To your point, you could take other classes to fulfill those credits. Well, lots of other options. Finance.
Sports and athletics.
Yep, spend some sports and athletics.
I'll stop talking.
Personal finance.
What's all the red text at the bottom of page 1 that's been crossed out?
Is this the last policy?
Those were added, those were when we adjusted to the block schedule, we had to adjust our credits accordingly. So as each class worked their way through the high school, we had to adjust incrementally the number of credits. But since we're already in the policy, now's the time to be able to add.
And now it's uniform for all kids, no matter what class they're graduating.
Okay. Any issues with moving that forward? And that ends the work session for this evening. Thank you.